Well, rock and roll has never looked better thanks to this legendary photographer.
Yeah, Mark Weiss has taken some of the most memorable photos that helped define one of the rock's most iconic era, the 80s.
This is a real rock and roll collectible. You cannot call yourself a real rocker unless you possess the decade that rocked.
Mark was ever present for those few years. You know, he was our photographer, and he was constantly coming out on the road and getting more shots because the demand was there. And when we did something significant like a video, or I went to Washington, or whatever, Mark was there. He made sure he was there. He was, he was capturing all that stuff. So, so I don't remember Mark. You say Mark was there. I don't remember him being there, but I don't remember Mark not being there. You know what I mean? It wasn't like it was a special thing that Mark was coming out. This was just part of our new extension of our troupe. Mark was our photographer.
He was one of those guys that once you become like personal friends with the bands and you party with them and you know them and you're backstage all the time, and he was the guy that sort of had the gold backstage pass. I think bands would kind of like do more with Mark than anybody else, and because he was more of a friend than just a photographer. You'd stay a little longer with him. If he had an idea to do some shot, you would do it because, he was one of the guys. He just wasn't one of the 18 photographers you were going to work with that day. Back then you were doing so much press, and there was so much interest in what bands were doing, the hair bands, what I call the hair bands. There were so many opportunities to get great shots because all these bands were fairly theatrical, and they all had image. So it was certainly a lot more fun to shoot then than it is, say, now, where bands just don't have any image at all. The bands tried to look good. The bands tried to look sexy. They tried to look, hot for the chicks and all the whole thing like that. So there was a real premium on makeup. There was a real premium on what you were wearing. What's the idea of this shot? What do we want to look like? Do we want to be provocative or do we want to look tough? That was really the whole deal. So in that case, if you were, say, like a band that really was image-free, it really was no point in doing all that. But if you were shooting a band like Poison, if you were shooting a band like Motley Crue, they wanted to get a lot of different shots, a lot of different looks, because the band wanted to look hot. So, yeah, I think Mark was probably working a lot more then because there was more interest in it. Now, I doubt if there's any bands out there that could care less about what they look like.
Mark has built some great relationships with musicians over the years, in lots of different ways. He's not only he's a cool guy, he's reliable, he's professional, and you feel comfortable in his company because you know that he does have a sense of respect. Some photographers can be real pains in the ass, but Mark has always been respectful because he knows he knows how difficult it is to be in a band. He knows the emotional bonfires that go on. So he's always very cool, and he's always got a demeanour about him that makes him very attractive to bands working with him. I'm just really happy for Mark that he survived in the pit, because God knows the things that are thrown into that pit from the stage and from the audience, but that Mark's contribution to the 80s in rock and metal is can never be overstated enough, just because he captured such a tremendous array of all these different types of rock and metal bands that he attended and took photographs of, and that the pictures really can say as much as the music.
We met Mark. Somehow, I think he came from the label Elektra. So Bryn says, would you want to do a photo shoot in We magazine? And I immediately thought, oh, this is perfect. This is perfect. So the whole idea was to really show who we were behind the scenes. Bring the motorcycles, bring the girls, bring the blood, bring everything. That photo shoot is who we were off stage. People looked at that and said, oh, whoa, these guys must put on a really good show. No. That's what was going on in hotels. The only place that would publish anything like that would be a pornographic magazine, which kind of set a tone for who Motley Crue was. So one of the big first photo shoots we ever saw is these guys with naked women and motorcycles. What the fuck? Mark was one of us, and that's why he did so well with so many artists, is they didn't feel like he was a company man. They don't feel he's a corporate guy. They feel he's a guy that loves music, that loves the lifestyle, and that is one of them. So, he was the perfect guy to be around and be a fly on the wall. He was one of the boys.
I thought that Mark was very easy, it's just easy to be around, he blended in well. He was shooting around the same time that we were beginning to have some great success, going from, being a really struggling band to having a little bit more success. And I think, being around at that particular time was a very special time in my career, just in general, but to be able to document that was really special. I remember some of those photos were great. And a lot of photographers don't do both live shots and pose shots. They tend to, I guess, prefer one or the other. But Mark was good at both. To me, it's all about capturing the essence of the artist. Whatever it is they're trying to present. Now, it's obviously different with each person, but, I could point to various ones that he did of me, and I'm sure, the emotions or whatever he was trying to capture really, really came through. So, when you capture the essence of an artist, and it sort of really speaks to the fans, and I think him being a fan could know almost better than other photographers what he was looking for, because he knew it as a fan when he saw it. So it was, I think he had a leg up on other people by other photographers who weren't necessarily as into the music, and it was more just a job for them. I'm sure it spoke to him as a fan.
Mark is the real deal. Mark actually loves what he does. So Mark may not play guitar, but that camera of his, that's his guitar. In that way, he's a rock star. He dresses the part. He could just as easily be Keith Richards' cousin. There are photographers that cover stuff just as news items. He actually likes this stuff. It's like the soundtrack of his life, if you will. When he takes a photo, he's not just doing a job. Because if you listen to him tell the story, he can't believe he actually gets to do this for a living and have fun and love it. Because he started off as a fan. And that ultimately, invariably, and other big words like gymnasium, is the best part of him, which is he shoots because he loves it, and everybody should be so lucky to be able to do something that they love doing. Maybe that's the highest compliment of his work. But I remember this snot-nosed kid coming up, and he's got a camera around him, and go, okay, everybody wants to get into the act. And he used to call himself weissguy, the Weiss guy. I thought, yeah, okay, that's funny, kid. Nice talking with you. He kept sticking his nose into it, and which is what you're supposed to do. You'll only get the respect you demand. And his work speaks for itself. You don't need to question it or anything. You look at his photos, you go, that's the real deal. because he understands about keeping the double chin out of the photo. He understands about lighting and framing. That's a really important one, framing. Lights and framing and drama. In a real way, he's a painter, if you will. Because photography isn't just pressing a button. You got to make all kinds of choices. What kind of filters? Is it light? Is it dark? What do I shoot against? When do I shoot? All kinds of stuff. So he may not have gone to school for it, in the same way that rockers can't read or write music and never went to school to learn music theory, but he knows this stuff, no question.
Mark was there, and he would come to take pictures, and it was never like, I need this much money, I need that much money, I need this and that. He was just there to take the pictures. I mean, whatever the financial end of it, you have to deal with that anyway, no matter what. But it was never like the first thing, you know what I mean? It was like, he knew where I was coming from, and he was there, and he supported what I was doing. And if he could get my picture in a magazine, he would do it. He was there. A photographer and other people like Jack Douglas have that instinct that know what that, to recognize that energy, and then be able to use their technical talent to capture it. And Mark's one of those few guys, and he'll be doing it till he can't lift up the camera, just like I'll be doing it till I can't lift up a guitar.
Mark Weiss is my rock and roll, rhythm and blues, all-American dream photographer. He captures the beast on film, and he is a warrior, bulldog, guerrilla, rock and roll cameraman. He's got a great level of awareness. He knows how to stay out of my way. So I'd say Mark Weiss epitomizes and embodies the ultimate guerrilla documentary photographer that has proven his capabilities on the Ted Nugent rock and roll stage, and he's the master of his craft.
Mark Weiss is like a member of our family. I first remember meeting him when he was a little kid, just starting out with a camera in the front. We give him all access passes. And he's just a part of the family. He must have more photos of me than any other photographer. We have lots of memorable times. He was the guy who introduced me to Zach. He was in the Plaza Hotel, and I was fucked up on champagne. We used to live in the fucking hotels. It was a good time a lot of years ago as well. It's like fucking 35 years. He said, wear this, put them on, and I did. He phoned Sharon, and Sharon gets him everywhere. If we had anything to do with anything and he wants to get in, we just let him in. He's part of the team. Sometimes it can be a pain in the ass. He gets his camera too close and he goes to get your attention. And I go, would you fucking stop doing that? Me and Motley Crue toured together. I remember saying to Doc McGee, I says, one of us is going to die. Because they were fighting, if they weren't fighting somebody else, they're fighting each other. Craziest fucking time. It was like the craziest tour I've ever done in my life. But they were fucking nuts.
Buddy, it's all happening. What's happening? The coffee table book. It's a go! Oh yeah, I heard all about it.
The guy who took pictures of Van Halen and Aerosmith.
Rock stars like Led Zeppelin, AC/DC.
You had to have great shots, and so it's one of the reasons we work with Mark.
Mark Weiss, he was one of my favorite, still is, one of my favorite photographers.
The thing about Mark Weiss is super cool, and you just chill, and it feels good when you see the photo.
Mark Weiss, there's a name that most everybody must know, especially if you lived in the 80s. He was one of the main photographers.
Mark Weiss did great sessions with us all over the place, all over the world actually.
His photos are completely iconic. I would see Mark's name so many times in some of the records I loved or credited to some of the photos I would love. His work stands the test of time.
What's his name again? Mark Weiss, that's right. One of my very best buddies. He shot the cover for Night Songs for us, and Mark scheduled the shoot for daytime. And I kept saying to him, that's not gonna look right. And he said, I shoot day for night. And I don't know what the fuck that meant.
You would find certain people you knew were the photographers you liked, come out on stage and see somebody I didn't know and then saw, oh, there's Mark Weiss. And then maybe you would happen to be a little bit more over on that side that night.
But to me, a guy that would always capture me and
That great moment was Mark Weiss.
Mark has shot, you name it, everybody in the business. Just incredible, you know, incredible photography, legendary, obviously.
But they asked me, well, what was it like, you know, growing up in the 80s and being in the rock business and all that, and they can't believe the stories, you know, really? That happened?
He said, hey, Zach, man, do you ever think about auditioning for Ozzy? And I remember Dave calling me up saying, oh, yeah, man, Ozzy's up at Mark's studio up at Empire State Building. I got the tape to Mark, and Ozzy said, just, you know, play with your heart, and the rest is history.
I did a shoot with Mark Weiss, the first Dangerous Toys shoot. That photo shoot with Mark was very influential on the rest of the photographs I ever took, whether it was a solo photo or with a band.
You can tell when Mark did something, you know, it was so beautiful, was so many things to look at, it always had a great vibe.
It's no surprise that we're sitting here now 30 years later or something and still doing it, because you're one of those guys who have been able to identify and move forward with the manifesting of your passion, and nothing's going to stop you.
Wow, all those pictures in there, amazing. He was everywhere you dreamt of being and then some. This Mark Weiss guy.
Mark Weiss is a fucking genius.